Hello YouTube. We've been cooking up something pretty special for you. Those who have been following the channel for a while now know that pretty much all of the content before this was in Lithuanian. However, we will be putting out many more videos in English from now on. So if you like this sort of content, if you want more videos in English, just make sure to let us know in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel to keep this going, and we really appreciate you tuning in. Today I'm going to be tying a fairly simple CDC pattern. Very similar imitation is already up on the channel, just in Lithuanian. However, this is one that I really love. It's a great upwing imitation, can be tied to imitate pretty much any upwinged mayfly adult. So I've tied it from size 8 to size 18. It's a great universal pattern and I really hope you enjoy it. I am using a 1x long dry fly hook in size 12 for this fly. Although I've tied this pattern in anywhere between size 8 and size 18, so you really feel free to experiment and match the naturals. Just start your thread at the hook eye and move it all the way back to where the hook starts to bend. Here I'll be tying in my tail. I'll be using a coq-de-lion feather for the tail. If you want to experiment and play around with CDC, you can also tie a CDC tail. However, I'll stay true to the recipe for now and use coq-de-lion. 4 or 5, 6 fibers from the feather, just pluck them away and measure the tail to be roughly a hook in length. Transfer the fibers to your left hand and tie them in on top of the hook. So remember, this is a mayfly imitation. Don't be shy with the length of the tail. Roughly the length of the hook is what I found to be perfect for this pattern. Once you've tied in the tail, once again, make close turns with your thread all the way back to the base of the tail. I'll be using a cream colored CDC feather for the body. Pick out quite a long feather that's long enough to be wrapped around the hook shank to form the body. Once again, you feel free to play around with the colors and to match the naturals that you're trying to imitate. Catch the feather in roughly around the middle with a couple of turns and start pulling it in. This way you're catching all the longer fibers, and when just the very tip of the feather is left, secure it on top of the hook and move your thread back to the hook eye. Grab the feather with your hackle pliers and start by making a single turn around the hook to form a base of CDC for the first turn, and with each turn afterwards just twist the CDC feather a couple of times, twisting it into sort of a rope, and wind it around the hook shank, forming the body. Since the CDC feather has a stem that tapers quite significantly towards the butt end, winding the CDC feather like that to form a body creates a naturally tapered body thanks to the thickening of the stem. So you really don't need to worry about the proportions and the tapering too much. The feather just does all the work for you. Just keep on doing that with each turn, catching any loose CDC fibers. It looks like a bit of a mess right now, but it can be quite easily trimmed up, and form the body to be roughly 2/3 of the hook shank in length. Once you're there, just tie the feather off with your thread Make sure it's secure and sniff the butt ends off close. Now I'll just get my thread out of the way to the hook eye and clean up the body, leaving just the part that has been wound around the hook shank without any stray fibers looking out. And once you trim the body like that, you can really see the natural taper of the CDC, forming a very, very delicate but nice taper to the body of the fly. Now, just with a few more turns, make sure that the stem of the CDC feather is secure. For the wing of the fly, I'll be using a couple of white CDC feathers. Just pick 2 feathers out of the packet. And I won't be needing them to face away from each other, so I just even up the tips so that they're nice and even. Brush the fibers to the front, transfer the feathers to my left arm, and at this point just measure the wing to be roughly a hook shank in length. Tie it in the middle part, roughly the middle part of the bare hook that you have remaining. And once you've done that, lift the wing up gently, make a couple of dam wraps on the front, and then to lock it in to be vertical, you pull both of the CDC feathers forward towards the eye of the hook and use your left arm to keep the wing up straight, and a couple of pinch wraps in front of the hook, securing the 2 feather butts. The result should be a wing that stays vertical and it's locked in that place, it's not going anywhere. Once that is done, just stick your scissors in between the wing and the feather butts and just snip them off close. You can keep the remaining butts. If you use long feathers, you can keep them for CDC hackles or CDC dubbing. Don't throw them away. And once that's done, tie everything in securely. Now, the natural wing of the mayfly isn't formed like this. For fishing, it doesn't really matter. It's just in terms of looks, I prefer a more natural look to the wing, so I'll come in with a pair of curved scissors and just snip it off lightly towards the end. Once again, this is completely decorative if you don't want to do this. You don't really have to, just feel like it provides a nicer wing and it doesn't really take away anything from the fly. Once that's done, move your thread right where your body stops and form a dubbing loop. You can either use a split thread if you're using one of those threads that's easy to slip. In this case, I'm using a thread that's not that easy to split, so I'll just form a dubbing loop and move the thread out of the way, all the way back to the hook eye. Stick my dubbing spinner into the loop, and now I'll prepare CDC for the thorax and the hackle. I will be using 2 CDC feathers to form it. I'm using the gray color for this particular pattern. Just pick out 2 slightly longer feathers so that you can stick them into the CDC clamp, to whatever tool you're using, whether it be the Petition clamp. Here I'm using just a Stomful clamps, paper clips, anything works, anything that works for you. So just pick a couple of feathers, line them up by the tips, and gently stroke them backwards so that the fibers stand up vertically to the stem. can pluck away the very back fuzzy fibers at the very butt end, and then just slip the 2 CDC feathers into the clip like that. You can immediately clip away the ends that you won't be using, and using another clip, transfer only the tips of the feather there, and at this point you can cut away the stems of the 2 CDC feathers, leaving you a prepared material that's ready to be put into a dubbing loop. Now just insert it inside of the dubbing loop. Make sure it's tight enough to hold it together. Spread it out slightly if you feel like you need to, and spin up the loop tight enough so that these CDC fibers aren't going anywhere. You're going to want to wind the CDC slightly similar to how you would wind the soft hackle, just instead of brushing it backwards to keep the fibers out of the way with each turn, you're going to be wanting to brush it slightly upwards so that as many fibers as possible get trapped looking up rather than looking down, because the profile of the fly, we want it to be laying pretty flat on the water surface. So the more hackle fibers point up, the lower is gonna sit on the water. Make 2 or 3 turns each side of the wing and tie off the dubbing loop. Once the loop's secured, you can cut it off close and just form a nice neat head at the front of the hook eye to pretty much finish the fly. Make a 4 or 5 turn whip finish to secure the thread. Cut the thread off close, and what I like to do at this point is to just trim any hackles that are still looking down flush with the bottom of the hook, and then just trim any fibers that you feel are getting into the way of the way you want the fly to look. I like to keep a few long fibers pointing out, because once the fly sits on the water, once the fly lands, they spread out nicely and they look pretty much like legs, and nothing really imitates legs better than some stray longer CDC fibers. So at this point, as long as I'm happy with the way the fly looks, just pick up some varnish, finish the head, let the varnish dry, and the fly is ready to fish. It really is a fairly simple pattern once you get the gist of the main core techniques. You can tie it in a variety of sizes, pretty much imitate any upwing, and it's just a great dry fly to have in your box. So that's it. It's really quite a simple fly to tie once you get a hang of the core techniques used to tie it up. And it's a great upwing imitation. Make sure to have some in your box, and you never know when it's going to come in handy. So thanks for watching, and once again, if you want more content like this, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments below.